Hi, it's Peter Schiff. It's Wednesday, October 7th, 2009. Well, gold still managed to gain a little bit today, maybe just a buck or so, following through on yesterday's, I think, $25 per ounce rise, despite the fact that the dollar weakened a little bit today. And that actually prompted Fox Business. I was on the show earlier this morning, and I think the commentator was mentioning that, or he was wondering, why was gold up even though the dollar was up? And I had to remind them that, it's not just the United States that's creating inflation. Monetary policy is too loose all around the world. I mean, even though the Australians just hiked rates to 3.25, they're still low. And certainly all around the world, look all over Asia and Europe, you've got rates at 1% or less at the majority of the world's central banks. So everybody's creating inflation. So it's not just Americans who are worried about a loss of purchasing power. It's people all around the world. So gold is rising not only because of weakness in the dollar, but because of weakness in all currencies. Now, because of what we're doing, gold will rise much more in terms of dollars than it will in terms of most other currencies, but it will still rise, I think, in other currencies. Also, I happened to read an article today from the Wall Street Journal regarding our old friends at Freddie and Fannie. Apparently, they haven't done enough damage to the economy, so they're getting ready to do some more. And now that they're officially government agencies instead of quasi-government agencies with an implicit and not an explicit guarantee, I guess they're really ready to up the ante on the damage they create. Their new plan, I don't know all the details, but their new plan is to provide funding for independent mortgage brokers to guarantee to pre-buy the mortgages they originate, so that they have money to originate mortgages that they don't have to hold, that they can just flip to Freddie and Fannie. Now, they can already do that, obviously, if they're issuing conforming mortgages, right, that conform to Freddie and Fannie standards. So obviously, what these are meant to is for Freddie and Fannie to buy loans of a lower quality than the ones they're currently buying, right? And of course, it's another moral hazard because the loans are still going to have some standards, they say. But obviously the standards will be lower than the existing standards, which is what we don't want. We want higher standards, not lower standards. But, of course, the incentive there is once the originators know that the government will buy the loans as long as they theoretically comply with these standards, you have all the incentives to cheat. The borrowers know this, the lenders know this. So if they can falsify the information, either one party or both parties combined, they know they've got a commitment from the U.S. government to buy the mortgages. Because again, we want to move away from this, from the moral hazard where the originator of the mortgage doesn't have the risk of the mortgage default. What the government is helping is these mortgage originators get rid of their mortgages so they don't care if the mortgage is default. We want to stop that practice. But again, the government has learned absolutely nothing from the mistakes of the housing bubble. They're just repeating them on a grander scale. And as the private sector is exiting these markets, as we've exited subprime and more risky loans, the government has simply picked up the slack. The FHA, as I talked about before, is basically seizing the subprime market that nobody else wants and lowering the standards even more. And now here you have Freddie and Fannie that before the government took them over, right, they were actually tightening up on their standards. Now that the government has taken them over, they've reversed course and they're lowering their standards even more. Of course, all they're trying to do is reflate this bubble, blow air into the housing bubble, and of course, this is fuel for the gold market. In order to keep home prices levitated, not only do they have to throw the lending standards or what's left of them out the window, but they have to keep interest rates ridiculously low, which is massive inflation and why the dollar is falling and gold is going up. And the only way the government can put a stop to this is by raising interest rates and letting all these mortgages go bad and letting these firms go under. But obviously, they have no political will to do that. Segueing back to politics for a minute, I want to comment again about the comments about World War II and about Nazis, or the alleged comments, because it's actually taken on a whole life, this story. I saw a report on it on the Ed Show on MSNBC, and all kinds of headlines. Peter Schiff, compares Democrats to Nazis, calls Chris Dodd a Nazi. I mean, this whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, first of all, right, I did not compare the Democrats to Nazis. After all, the Nazis got the Olympics. Now, that's a joke, in case you didn't know, right? There is no comparison to the Nazis. They are in a category all by themselves. There is nothing that the Democrats or anybody in Congress, for that matter, could do that would remotely compare to what the Nazis did. And for anybody to even try to suggest that I made that comparison it's absolutely ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. But of course, I guess that's politics, and that's how I guess, unfortunately, some of my critics, particularly on the left, are choosing to try to discredit me because they can't really do it on any legitimate issues. Now, maybe this might backfire. I mean, a lot of this publicity might actually help me. Who knows? I mean, my name recognition is still pretty low among the Connecticut electorate. And, somebody once said, all press is good press. And I think that, my critics end up looking pretty ridiculous here because it's pretty obvious what I actually said to anybody with half a brain. But, along those lines, if it's going to get me some free publicity, let me clarify this statement a little more. It's not that I think that the Democrats are like Nazis. They're more like vampires. They're sucking the blood out of the American taxpayer. And rather than fancying myself as a Nazi hunter, like they're trying to categorize me, I kind of consider myself more like a Van Helsing, and I've got my crosses and my garlic, and I got a backpack full of steaks, and I'm headed to Washington. Now, that's a joke too, of course. But let's see if the left or the blogosphere is now abuzz with allegations that Peter Schiff is going to take stakes to the hearts of congressmen because he considers them vampires. Who knows? Maybe this is more fodder for such attacks. We'll have to see. Anyway, all kidding aside, I'm off for some travels. I'm going down to New Orleans. I'm speaking at the investment conference down there, the Granddaddy of Investment Conference, used to be the Blanchard Conference. Then I'm off to Hawaii. I'm speaking at an investment conference there. On the way back, I swing to a Hispanic organization that has me. I'm speaking in front of them in Chicago. And then I come home. Now, some of my critics here in Connecticut are accusing me of leaving the state and not campaigning. These commitments were made months and months ago, some of them 6 months ago, and long before I was a candidate. And I don't think that I need to renege on these commitments. I think there's still plenty of time for Connecticut voters to get to know me. We are working on a strategy. It's still a long time from the election, but what I am doing is I am trying to seriously cut down on my out-of-town commitments going forward. I am really not making very many new commitments. And so I will be in town to really focus on this campaign. And it's particularly going to kick into high gear after the local elections here, when I think there'll be a lot more interest on it. So again, if you want to help, if you want to volunteer to support me, you want to donate money to this campaign, go to the official website, schiffforsenate.com, make your contributions, sign up. So make sure to listen this evening. I will be doing another episode of Wall Street.